founder and CEO of Cannabis MD. Welcome to another CBMD video profile. On this one, I'm very excited to host Dr. Sandra Carrillo, who is president of the Colombia Medical Cannabis Association, as well as she has been fervently working towards a legislation on establishing a medical cannabis program in Panama. So first, I'm going to give you some background on Dr. Carrillo. We had the pleasure of meeting in Malta, November of 2019, and we were going to be in a couple of different countries. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we're doing this virtually, so excited to spend some time with her. She's also going to be a member of the roundtable discussion on the clinical application of medical cannabis at the upcoming Cannabis MD, Cannabis Science and Therapeutics Provider Education Forum. So first, some background on Dr. Carrillo, which is very extensive. So she is a specialist in cannabinoid-based medicine. She's a member of the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, a member of the International Cannabinoid Research Society, a member of the International Association for Cannabinoid Medicine. She is a leading advocate, as I spoke of, in Panama for the legalization of cannabis for medicinal purposes. She regularly appears as an expert witness during numerous sessions held by the Government Assembly Health Commission, which is responsible for drafting and implementing the legalization of cannabis for medical use in Colombia. That proposed law is waiting approval. She's also a the professor in charge of the scientific program of medical cannabis faculty of medicine, the University of Panama, which is, if I have this correct, the largest university in Panama, and this is specific to its medical school program. Dr. Carrillo also holds a master's in healthcare services management and is a certified anti-aging and regenerative medicine, and is an international speaker and an international advocate for cannabinoid-based medicine. She co-founded the Food Bank of Panama and is a volunteer member of an epilepsy foundation as well in Panama. Her clinical practice is based in Colombia. Really looking forward to her sharing the difference between the Colombian medical program and how it is set up in the United States, and we're also going to have a more of an international focused conversation. So as a physician practicing cannabinoid medicine in Latin America, she's going to be adding this unique perspective when she joins her industry colleagues again on the roundtable discussion of clinical and scientific use of medical cannabis. During that roundtable, Dr. Carrillo and her colleagues are going to be discussing the interactions of cannabis with the endocannabinoid system, clinical pharmacology, dosing, delivery, and the therapeutics and integrative care. They're going to examine the intersection of the cannabis industry with traditional healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry, and a bit of technology. So, welcome, Dr. Carrillo. Did I miss anything?
Oh, you did it perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for having me. I really think your initiative of education is amazing. This is exactly what we need in this moment, educate healthcare practitioners, because through the good level of education is that we can provide to the patient safe access. If the doctors and health practitioners are well trained, they know how to do prescription or recommendation, this also goes on benefit of the patients.
Absolutely, yeah, and that is, it's paramount, as I say, is that healthcare providers across the world, as this medical cannabis programs are emerging again globally. I had a brief interaction with actually the commissioner of the medical cannabis program in Cyprus today. So, we're just, everybody is understanding the efficacy of this plant-based medicine and the critical importance that the physicians and all healthcare providers have some level of understanding so they can deliver quality patient care. So to that end, we're talking about physicians. So tell me about the education program that you are establishing or have established at the University in Panama.
Yes, well, that's very important because my idea and my ideal scenario will be when we have doctors doing through specific programs of training that they are recognized by universities, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So what I've been doing, and I know most of the doctors all over the world, they have to do through courses, a few hours here, few hours there. But the idea is to create formal education. Mm-hmm. So my idea is informalize the education, doing alliances with universities. And actually that's one of the things that I've been doing in Panama as a professor of the Faculty of Medicine. I am in charge of the scientific and educational program of cannabinoids medicine. Mm-hmm. And the good thing is in Panama, we still don't have medical cannabis legalized, mm-hmm. but I've been working, as you mentioned, with the government for creating, helping and advocating for legislation, since we know the patients need the treatment. So the university has the initiative to start teaching. We've been doing since last year, mm-hmm. Symposiums and academic conferences to different public, to hospitals, directors of hospitals, to government, to Minister of Health, to Minister of Education. So we started for the top of the politics governance. And then we started doing more education to the doctors, to the pharmacists, mm-hmm. to the nurses. So we've been going through this process, and I think it's very important because my dream will be that in the future, all the faculties of medicine are teaching to the students of medicine, students of pharmacy, nurses, about the endocannabinoid system. This is something that is a reality. Right. We were born with it, and it's I will say funny because I don't want to say something else that we never heard about this. So I never heard about the endocannabinoid system when I was a medical student, but you know, it's not about thinking in the past, it's about moving forward and right. things for the future. So in Panama, we are creating education with the university in Colombia. I was a professor of the first diplomate certification last year. Uh-huh. We were training doctors, specialists. It was like 50 doctors, cardiologists, psychiatrists, anesthesiologists, a very wide variety of doctors who got the certification. And this year, I made an alliance with a very prestigious university in Colombia. And I made a platform, educational platform, co-created with Dr. Michael Dor. Mm-hmm. He's an Israeli doctor. He used to be the former senior medical advisor of the cannabis unit in Israel. Mm-hmm. So he's a very knowledgeable doctor and authority in Israel. So we created this educational platform that now, in alliance with the university, we created a diplomate. So this is a certification diplomate granted by a university that now we have like translated in Spanish. Mm-hmm. So we can offer to the all Latin American doctors.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, I mean, and that has bearing across Latin America. And then I think it's very exciting is that Panama is actually ahead. I wanted to talk to you about Uruguay in a bit, but where Panama is recognizing the critical importance of the education, and you certainly have been stalwart in that, but that physicians will be ready, or aspiring physicians will be ready when the program becomes available. So have an understanding of your legislative session, but what's the anticipation of when medical cannabis will become legal in Panama?
Well, my expectations, and this is like my expectations, you know, with the COVID and everything, we passed first debate. And after first debate, but we did that like end of February.
Mhm.
So we thought this was going to be like on speed line. I mean, because
Right.
the government did a lot of consultations, and the senators with all the main actors, Minister of Health, of Agriculture, Security, and everything was good, but COVID came and
Yeah.
delayed everything. So my hope, and as the way I see it, is that by the end of this year, we probably will have medical cannabis legalized in Panama. And it's been 3 years of advocacy and of doing a lot of media, a lot of teaching, a lot of advocacy. But I love it. You know, this is what it takes, and I was willing to put the effort because I think it's worth it. Because at the end, I am a doctor and I see the patient needs these treatments. It's about human rights. They need it, and it's not fair to have to tell a patient, a mother with children with epilepsy, telling her, oh, you know, let's wait until next year when the kid is having 300 seizures. So it's about human rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and as and those of us who are in medical programs in the industry across the globe understand that medical cannabis, it's not a panacea, but it's certainly as an adjunctive therapy used alone, it is truly efficacious. So I wanted to ask you then, with Panama and the language that, I don't know if you're there yet in writing the legislation, but in Colombia, and this is one thing that to talk about, is that there's a difference in using the word prescribe in Colombia, which in the United States, because medical cannabis is federally illegal, yet it is legal in the 33 states and the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, the operative word is recommend. So want to understand more about the Colombian model of delivery and patient care, and then what will be the semantics of delivery for Panama patients.
Okay, in Colombia, we legalized medical cannabis 5 years ago. I live between Panama and Colombia because I have my clinical practice in Colombia. And Panama is 50 minutes flight to Colombia. So it's so close. We are just in the border. So in Colombia, in my clinical practice, and doctors in Colombia, they can prescribe. We can prescribe medical cannabis. What we do is go through the process of writing in a special formulary prescription with the indications that we think the patient needs. And the government created the compound pharmaceuticals are the ones that are the legal right now. So the model says that you create one single formulation for one single patient or one single pathology. That means that the pharmacies cannot have like bulk of products. The medication or the medical cannabis is prepared at the moment that the patient takes the formulation to this laboratory. They prepare the formulation for just one single patient, and then 5 days later, they deliver it to the patient, or the patient goes and pick it up in a pharmacy. So it's a little bit complicated, but is what we have, and compared with the rest of the Latin American countries, I feel that we are in a good position. Of course,
right.
We want more variety of products. We also have one pharmaceutical grade formulation that is like the Epidiolex. It's a Colombian company who created a CBD isolate.
Mm-hmm.
So as doctors, we have the option to prescribe that one. I love whole plant, but some doctors decide to do isolates, and it's according to each of one of them. And actually, you brought a point that is very important, and I always said, cannabis is not a panacea, is not a first-line treatment, and it's an adjuvant treatment. But it's very important because, as we've seen in the clinical practice and in the studies and the research, clinical research, improves the quality of life of the patients tremendously.
And the families, the family members, yes, yes. So, so then, are you there yet in establishing or writing the legislation in Panama? That will it be prescription? Will it be recommend? And I would imagine you're advocating strongly for a greater availability of product.
Yes, I will recommend the same. And
Yeah.
even Latin American countries, they will like follow the lead of.
Okay.
They look a lot up to what they're doing in the States,
Mm-hmm.
the US, what they're doing in Europe. But I do think that the Latin American models are going to be very similar, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I will advocate for patients to have, in the moment that the legislation is approved, that the patients can have instant access. Because what I've seen in other countries, and is my biggest worry when a country is starting with legislation, is that they approve the legislation and everybody has to wait like 3, 4, 5 years until the first oil is available for patients. So I hope that these can be better. But it's just many considerations that the government have to take and think and consult. So I give my suggestions.
Yeah.
Let's see. I always hope for the best.
Well, so what is the concern? No, Colombia obviously has this history in cannabis as leading the illicit market. And so is that the building the legal market, has there been a challenge by the illicit market? I've heard from some attorneys that are doing business in Colombia that actually the illicit market, whether it's a cartel or refer to it as something else, has been supportive of when companies are coming in, whether they be from the US or Canada, setting up operation, that they've been supportive and actually are sharing their knowledge assets. Can you speak to the illicit market working together with the legal market?
Well, as you just mentioned, Colombia, more than any other country in Latin America, suffered the war on drugs.
Right.
And we've been living horrible times with the guerrillas, with all these nonsense that the people has been suffering and living, and even the agricultures, they've been displaced from their lands because they were taken over by the narco traffic. But I think that situation improved a lot. I do see Colombia more safe place. And I do see the cannabis industry giving Colombia this opportunity to create a different name. Because
right. I mean, this is a game changer for Colombia. Yeah.
It is. We are known as exporters of coffee and flowers. So we are very in our roots, in our traditions, agriculture.
Right.
Very privileged geographical production, and the labor is very affordable. So I do see a lot of companies from Canada, as you mentioned, from the States, trying to locate in Colombia, and I see a very good future. The thing is, the government is being very strict with the regulations. And in some way, I understand, because, we've been going through all these years of war on drugs that they have to be very strict. But I think now is the moment to start moving forward faster, because the past years were very slow. And I see this particular year, 2020, even with the coming of the COVID, I see that the regulations are moving forward to providing more for the patients, to allowing doctors, patients, and industry to move forward. So I am actually very optimistic on this. And as you were mentioning, how the people in Colombia perceive the medical cannabis.
Right.
I can tell you from the medical perspective, Colombia is a very conservative society. So doctors were like very reluctant at the beginning. And every time that you were going to talk about medical cannabis, they were giving you like this look and everything. But now now with the association with the Colombian Medical Association of Cannabis Medicine, I am being like really, really surprised to see how many doctors, specialists from all specialties, as I said, psychiatrists, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, coming to our association because they want to belong to a scientific association to make sure that the information that they have is good, that they can have source to reliable papers, to reliable research. So I do see a big trend in Latin America towards this. The doctors are getting more curious because they see that there is scientific evidence and there is an opportunity for the patients.
So let's step back for a moment. That I didn't ask you right at the beginning is prior to the medical cannabis, becoming a cannabinoid specialist, what was your clinical area of expertise?
Yes, well, I was a ER doctor for 2 years. And then I studied anti-aging medicine in Spain and in Argentina and regenerative medicine. And then I did a master's in healthcare services administration. So I was working a lot on all my life, but I started seeing like 5 years ago how medical cannabis was so important. And at the beginning, I saw it and I was reluctant and I had that stigma until to Canada, and I went to a conference where I saw like 500 doctors from different specialties talking about endocannabinoid system, and in that moment it's just like click to me. And since then I've been like obsessed, in love, devoted to learn about this, because it's incredible, because I haven't seen this with other medicines. And at the beginning, my quest was just like trying to find where is the thing that it doesn't work in here. It must be something that is not quite right.
Yeah.
I mean, more I study, and more I learn, and more I know that we really need to keep looking and studying and researching. But more I love the plant, more I love what can do for patients.
Now so you have a background in emergency medicine, and I seem to be seeing, I don't know if it's just particular who I'm engaging with, but obviously or not so obviously, with cannabis being effective on treating the side effects of chemotherapy. So oncologists having familiarity, but I'm seeing more and more emergency physicians having great interest in medical cannabis. Is that as patients are coming in and they've why is that? And if that is true, and then why, if it is, why?
I see a lot. The specialists at different specialties, they are a lot into their specific core. Let's say a neurologist, just to what else, epilepsy, neurodegenerative disease, and psychiatrist, this. But I see with GPs, emergency doctors, family doctors, they found in here a special area where they can work in a very tight conjunction with the specialist. And this is what I see, because I do think there is certain pathologies that they have to be treated by the specialist. I just give you an example. If I have a patient that comes to me with epilepsy, the first thing that I do is I tell her, the mother, because usually our children, I said, who is your neurologist? Where is the neuropediatrician? Who is treating you? What are the medications? And immediately I get in contact with the neuropediatrician, because this is, and sometimes the neuropediatricians call me and I said, listen, I have this patient, refractory epilepsy. I've tried everything, it doesn't work, and I know that medical cannabis can work. But I never studied, I'm afraid to prescribe it. Let's work together. So it's a beautiful, I call it like symbiosis.
Yes.
I think it's for the first time in the medicine, the way I've seen it, the doctors and specialists can have like a very good team, because the GP or the family doctor will just do the treatment, the ones that get certified, and the neurologist start learning, but it also is confident that the doctor that has a specialty in cannabinoid medicine it will back up the part of cannabis. So my idea is, of course, that the specialists get trained and get to know
Right.
specifically the dosing and everything. But right now, I do see, because the specialists, they do have a lot of patients with other pathologies that not necessarily fit into cannabis. So
Right.
it's hard that a doctor, let's say a neurologist, drop the rest of the therapies just to do epilepsy. At least there is an epileptologist. But I do see, and the same with cancer patients, with palliative care. I do see, again, that you talk to the oncologist, and some oncologists come and say, can you help me? I have this patient, it's on morphine, it has these side effects. I read that we can reduce opioids, including some medical cannabis. So you start working together, and I think it's a good thing to do, because that way GPs and family doctors and even ER doctors, they have another
Treatment option. Yeah.
And I actually always say, when I do conference for doctors, I said, listen, after these conferences, I'm not pretending to convince you to prescribe or to recommend medical cannabis. The only thing is, I have to tell you, you have the obligation as a physician to know what is the endocannabinoid system and what is medical cannabis, because all the patients are going to come to your consultation.
Right. I hear over and over again is that the patients are educating the physicians, which, is backwards, of course. So it sounds like that engaging with the family practitioners, family medicine, that's the first line. Know that everybody, well, if they don't, they should have a primary care provider. So again, physician, nurse practitioner, whoever it is, that first line on their healthcare team. So let's revisit back to Latin America and Uruguay. So you and I have had a previous really interesting conversation about Uruguay and their model, where they were the first country in Latin America, maybe globally, to legalize recreational adult use before medical cannabis. So how has that worked out for Uruguay?
Well, what I see, and I'm not an expert in this area, I think that because they legalized recreational first, when the medical came, I think not all the doctors were on board. I do see that right now they are because they're incredibly knowledgeable doctors in Uruguay. They started leading this movement of medical cannabis. So, so I do think that in countries, Latin American countries, the rest of the countries decided just to legalize medical. They didn't want to go like the same way they legalized recreational or adult use and medical, because it wasn't like too clear for the practitioners or for the clinicians, because sometimes the patients confuse the things, and sometimes they rather to go to the easy way. So I think the regulations has to be very well placed, because it's a thin line, and I think as doctors, and what I always say, I respect whatever people want to do. They want to do one or other. But in my position as a doctor, I always recommend that whomever wants to use cannabis or medical cannabis, of course, should go through a clinician, to a practitioner, to a doctor, to get the right. Of course, in Colombia, the only way that you can get it legally is through a doctor's prescription. So it's the only way that you know that you're getting a product that it has.
Right, that's safety, which is paramount. Yeah. So I think this is also a critical lesson of certainly which physician practice specialties should have primarily an understanding of endocannabinoid medicine, cannabinoid therapy, is also to have discussions with their patients where there's no judgment, that they shouldn't be per medical ethics, including any judgment in their conversations, but that patients, if they're using recreational, if they're using illicit cannabis, it's very imperative that they share that information with their physicians, because as we've been talking to, is that those untested products can be very dangerous. They could have other chemical compounds, dangerous ones present, as well as, which you'll be discussing in your roundtables, that drug-drug interaction. So critically important that physicians have these conversations with the patient. So one question then on dosing. So that's somewhat complex, so that the rule of thumb, start low, go slow, 2.5 milligrams, seemingly the starting dose. What would be the next product or drug delivery method that you would like to have access to in Colombia?
Wow, well, my wish list.
Your wish list.
I love it.
And we're going to have on the some formulators. So we'll get the word out.
I love it. In Colombia, we just have access, and the law just allows tinctures,
yes,
capsules, and oils. We don't have access to vaporization or of the flower. No.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see the vaporization with a proper device, because remember, the vapes in general, it has to be a special device, the flower. I do see a big value in there for acute situations when the patient have flare-ups.
Right.
It's very important to have the inhaled or that vaporized.
Right, that immediate, pharmacokinetic,
Yeah, so
Yes.
so that, but the oral dosing and sublingual does the job.
Right.
But I do think in the future, right now, Colombia doesn't allow it. But as I say, I feel grateful that at least we have something, because
Right.
it is hard, and I see it in the States, how just some states you can have access to medical cannabis, but in others you can't. So, it's very sad to have to tell the patient and terminal cancer, I'm sorry, let's wait to the government decides, because pain cannot wait, suffering cannot wait.
Right.
And sometimes, and I always say, humans, we have the right to live with dignity and also to die with dignity. And what I see with the patients in the terminal stages and the last moments of their lives, when they are using just the opioids, is very different.
Oh, yes.
You see a patient using just opioids and a patient using opioids plus medical cannabis or medical cannabis. And it's totally different the way the patient is perceiving the end of his life. And
Right.
it is about, as I said, it's about human rights. You have the right to die with dignity. And that I advocate for that all the time, because I don't think people should have to suffer for not having access.
No, and I've had both, I've been part of a greater hospice community for several years now, and that, as you say, a tremendous value treatment as an adjunctive therapy for patients, whether it be in hospice care, whether it be in palliative care, that they're managing chronic disease. I lost, unfortunately, both my sister and my mother to cancer. And as I saw them with the impact of with the food and the desire to eat, had they had opportunity to have access to medical cannabis, I don't know if they would have taken advantage of that, but to have that choice, right? For a patient to have that option. All right, so one last question, and we're skipping across the globe now to Israel. And with the relationship that you have with Dr. Doris, so does this then, Israel is famous and far more advanced in its research than in the U.S., and across most global markets. So does that relationship open the door and opportunities for Colombia to be a leader in Latin America with research and partnering with Israel?
Well, I mean, I've been in Israel twice. I
Yeah.
love Israel, and I have great friends there. And I had the opportunity to sit with Professor Rafael Meshulam a whole morning in his office. And it was wonderful. It was beautiful. He was such a gentle person and peaceful and nice. And I think, yes, they are pioneers. They
Yes.
never stop. They all the time. I even had the opportunity to be a speaker in Portugal with Dedi Meiri.
Yes.
Conducting a lot of research in different areas. Cancer is one of those. He's doing a lot of in vitro and I mean a lot of studies. And I do admire Israelis because they are pioneers in medicine. They're pioneers in technology.
Right.
And well, with the educational platform, I co-created with Dr. Dor. I'm very excited because a very big portion of the speakers are doctors from Israel, which I value a lot their knowledge because they're talking more about their clinical practice, their experience, since they have I think 8-10 years of doing this. So I am very optimistic because I see, as you pointed it very well, in the States, you have a lot of educational programs and platforms, formal education, and a lot of resources with all these wonderful scientific associations. Latin America, we don't have that much.
Well, there's a caveat to that, though. We do have, these are associations and private entities like my own, Cannabis MD, is that what we're missing is more than 90% of medical schools do not have cannabis science education, that the clinical education looks at cannabis as a cannabis use disorder, not as an adjunctive therapy that we've been talking about. So I think, to what you're saying and what we are saying is that this energy that we have from advocacy and recognizing the efficacy is that rising it to reach the clinical education. And I think with that, would be the change, and this is the change in the United States of the scheduling of cannabis. That it's illegal because of Schedule 1. So and this is another conversation to have, but reschedule to something else so that universities aren't scared to include it in their programs, that they are afraid of losing funding. This goes. It's pretty complex and it needs to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, as you say, there is like ups and downs. The way I see in Latin America, I mean, you are far more advanced. First of all, you have, of course, a variety of products. You have doctors and nurses and clinicians and practitioners.
Right.
Knowledge, because since you have the dispensary model,
right,
it's like you can use different type of practitioners to give access to the patient.
Right.
That's very important. You have the journals. I mean, for me, I found amazing that now we have the American Journal of Endocannabinoid Medicine.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that now it's very important to have reliable sources of information for doctors and clinicians, because as I always said, people think that they just go on Dr. Google, they Google something and whatever they found in the first line, cannabis is good for, I don't know, finger, I mean, any type of things, and you cannot believe those things. So there you need to go to, and that's what I always go to, reliable sources of information.
Yeah, to that point, it's one thing on social media where so many patients and prospective patients go to as a resource, and I saw a very dangerous post just of misinformation about that CBD. Well, and I'll ask you, my education thus far in medical cannabis science is that CBD does offset too much THC or an overdose of THC, or what's your final word on that?
Well, I do see, I think that everything in excess is not good. I mean,
Right.
we know that cannabis have a safety profile, very, very good. It's a very safe treatment. But of course, the part in here is not cannabis per se, is the interaction with other medications. So in here, this is what I say, that you're not gonna take, it's important that you visit the doctor if you want a prescription to treat any type of ailment, because the doctor will know. Let's say there's interactions with warfarin,
Right.
with the clobazam, and these are serious things with the valproic acid. So these are things that you're not aware, and you start self-medicating. You can have some consequences. Of course, there's no like death reported situations with cannabis, but it's about the interactions the cannabis can have, that if it's properly dosed and monitored by a doctor, of a clinician, or a practitioner, it will be fine. And it's my biggest fear, because when people start self-medicating, is that the bad things can happen. So we don't want that to happen to cannabis, medical cannabis. We don't want to create a bad reputation just because somebody didn't want to go to the doctor or didn't want to visit the healthcare practitioner to get a proper assessment. So I always encourage people, visit the doctor or your healthcare practitioner for good advice. Don't go and just buy whatever you think is good, because sometimes medical cannabis is not for everybody. And
No.
sometimes doesn't work for certain people.
And very dangerous for pediatric patients. So if they, or children, period, is, patients need to be mindful, and healthcare professionals should be also including counseling, educating their parents on keeping their cannabis safe, because children are not, their endocannabinoid system is just not a miniature version of an adult. So, yeah.
And among with that, I always recommend to do education to youth, because what I see is these teenagers and young people saying, oh, I'm going to use it because, if it's used as a medicine. But this is the part, when you're accessing as a treatment for an ailment, the approach that the doctor takes is different. When somebody is going to buy in the streets for something else, they use extremely high amounts of THC.
Right.
You don't know if it's contaminated, and you don't know what else is in there that cause all different types of problems. So it's very important to do education for the youth, or for the risk population, so they understand that this is something that you go through a doctor for a specific ailment, and you'd have to do in a clinical history record, a very thoroughly assessment if the patient is a candidate or not, because there's sometimes the patients come to my consultation, no, I want medical cannabis because I think, and I do the assessment and I say, no, I'm sorry, it's not going to work for you. I don't think it's for you.
Right. Right.
Not, the patient will not understand, but the doctor will know what are the indications. And I know we will have more research released in the next 5-10 years, where we will have more evidence that they will allows us to do more things and better things.
Right. Well, on that positive note, that the future of medical cannabis looks very bright. So thank you for the generosity of your time. We'll see you at the Cannabis Science and Therapeutics Provider Education Forum very soon. And I hope to see you somewhere on the globe in person.
Me too.
In the next 6 months would be really great, but most likely not. We'll see. In any event, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie, for having me, and looking forward for the conference.
Thank you.